Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to the Millionaire by Morning podcast show. We have a guest with us today by the name of Will R. Young. He is a behavior finance expert, practicing Stoic philosopher, and financial advisor with more than 20 years of experience. He has helped hundreds of individuals and families move beyond spreadsheets and into conversations that actually matter. Will, I'd like to welcome you to the Millionaire by Morning podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
Thank you very much for being here with us today. You could have been anywhere in the world, but you chose to be here with us. So we are grateful for that. I'm going to jump right into it, man. I want to ask you, Will, for anyone who do not know you, can you give us some insight into the person that you are and what you currently are doing?
Yes, I was somebody who questioned everything, extraordinary curiosity, a high need for cognition. And I oftentimes we go through life without ever really questioning why we get up in the morning, why we do things that we do. You, it's just something that happens. And for me, from an early age in sports, I would hear people go on TV and give opinions about what they thought would happen. It would never happen. And they would call these people experts. We all know who the people we're talking about. Often wrong, but they're seldom in doubt. And then even after they're wrong, they are confident. And that translates to stocks, the stock market, the economy, and politics and policy. People will go on. And for me, I always said, why don't we have a ranking system for people that give their opinions? And they don't. But if you're a quarterback, you get a ranking. If you're a team, you get standings. So that just made logical sense. But when you go on TV and you watch CNBC or Bloomberg or any of these, everybody has an opinion. But I often say, what is their accuracy rate? And so that's something I personally have. I have what's called a Brier score. And it just got me thinking, have people always been this way? That led me to Stoicism, which I started studying about 15 years ago, understanding that I can control myself. I want to have quality choices in everything I make. That's virtue. The accuracy of my judges, which is Sophia, which is wisdom. That just aligned with who I was and what I had always seen as the world view for me. But I also had to fit into the world. And I had to learn the behavioral psychology and the finance and the neuroeconomics so that I could have conversations without alienating people. Because just telling someone they're wrong, even if they're wrong over and over again, they'll keep. It's like when we like our sports team, even if they keep treating us bad, we stick with them. And we've all been there before. We've all had things like we have the Washington Wizards here. They've been bad forever, yet we still keep going to the games. You feel like an abused person. But in life, when it comes to your money, that matters. You don't want bad outcomes year after year where the only person making money is the owner. You need to do that. So in these types of areas, I started to build my own mental models, my own strategic algorithms, so to speak. And I built over 60,000 of them over the last 15 years, which is a stunning amount. I didn't realize that until recently. And that's led me to the person I am today, where I say I architect wealth. I look at the behaviors and then I build the models based on the behaviors because we humans are running ancient code that's been around for hundreds or millions of years, but we're in a modern world. And
Hmm.
that that's how we are. When we get upset, we're emotional, we have the same things that have always been this way, and Stoicism brought me to that point when Seneca's reading or walking through Rome with the Colosseum behind him, and he goes, people are caught up watching the sports but forgetting the politicians are robbing them. That's no different than today, is it? No. It's the same thing. We're constantly paying attention or distracted. So my focus is helping people be focused, or I focus and build that trust so that we can help them achieve their dreams. Because wealth is different to each person. But financial independence is what everybody wants. They want to be able to do things in life without worrying, where does my next paycheck come? How do I make ends meet? And so that's why I wrote my book, The Enough Equation, so you could write down what's important to you. Because ultimately, when you pass away, you're not going to say, he sat in the most traffic. He had the longest hours in a cubicle. That doesn't mean anything. And if you win the rat race, you're still a rat. Who wants to be a rat? Not me. And so these are just reframing how you think for success, because it's not more money, it's more lifestyle, more love in your life, more personal wealth, sitting with your mother, enjoying a holiday, sitting across from her, or spending more time with your nieces or younger kids who don't want to get off of their phone. And getting things like that, spending time with the people you care about is ultimately what matters. And doing, like, I do animal rescue, so things like that matter to me. Rescuing orangutans in Borneo, or I'm going to go rescue bats this year in Australia.
So who is your ideal client? And your ideal client, what does their life typically look like before they find you?
Well, I work with people all over the country. And since I'm near DC, it has nothing to do with religion, because I have all different religions and stuff like that, and all different races. We're all from Africa, to be honest. And about 30,000 years ago, the Homo sapiens came up and wiped everybody out anyway. So I always think of us as we're universal in that sense. So for me, none of that matters besides values. Values matter to me. Or what are you, if you're just trying to squeeze out more dollars and more dollars, we're probably not going to align. I do better than the markets. I want somebody that I'm going to enjoy having conversations with, and they're going to enjoy having conversations with me. That's what matters to me, is the values, the moral values that we share. Like, are we trying to make society better? Are we trying to help each other out? Do we look out for people? When you're down, does someone look out for you? And can I help you? Those are the things that matter to me, because I'm never going to have as many clients as a traditional architect or investment advisor, financial advisor, CFP. I just don't want it. I enjoy surfing all over the globe. I love strong relationships. To me, relationships are the water we swim in. That's what matters to me. So that's essentially it. And I think I'm making myself clear on values. If you're loving to meet people, if you're a people person, bringing people together, building relationships, helping educate people. Like, that's the type of person. I'm a progressive. I'm a person that wants to be inclusive and build bridges. So we are constantly working together. And so that's what I mean by that. And my typical clients are somewhere between 45 to, I guess, 93 at this point. That's my oldest client. And they've saved well. And normally I do have a fairly high minimum of I mean, the minimum is 500,000, but my average base is probably closer to like 3 million. But, not everybody can start there. But if we have a strong bond and we get along, I will help you, because I never want to be overwhelmed. And in order for me to do that and travel and do all the things that matter to me, I work. And when I was in Hawaii for 2 weeks surfing on the North Shore, I'm still working 4 hours a day because I love it, and I'm still studying. And if someone needs me, they can get a hold of me. I have a team and stuff like that. But I don't run from my life. So, but I can't have 150 or 200 clients or households like the average advisor. I'm only going to have 50 or 60. So,
Got it. Got it. So Will, can you take us back? And so what were you doing before this chapter of your life began?
uh, I was in college. I liked sports. I had thought about doing sports broadcasting. I wasn't always an extrovert, when I was an adult, and I thought I would enjoy being on TV talking about sports. But then I started thinking, maybe that's not my passion. Maybe that's not where I want to end my life. And I think when you get in your late 20s, you really start to reevaluate, or at least I did. Like, where's my life going to be 10, 20, 30 years from now? Am I going to be satisfied with the work that I did in life and the life I led? am I going to be charitable? Charities have been a big deal for me. I donate to about 25 animal charities a month. I've been actively involved in them for 30 years. So for me, that's a huge deal. And I started to see if I was in one field, I may not get the joy that I would get in something else. So in this area, even though I didn't have a finance degree, I decided to I had a business degree, but I decided to work and push myself to be in an area where I knew I could actually help architect outcomes, build things, sustain things. And I knew that most stuff is really sales process and automation. And I didn't want to be automated in a world that's not automated in this sense. Who wants to just be, dealing with an advisor who is like a call center? So for me, that's kind of what led me to this, is the reevaluation of what I did. But I was basically in college and just working regular jobs and waiting tables, all the normal stuff. And I worked on computers because I'm logical in that sense. So that was kind of my pre-dated stuff. So it took me a little bit, and once I got out, I really started to figure out what I wanted, and that's what led me to this field.
So, got it. What made you go in the direction of, as it relates to financial advisors, stoicism, and just behavior psychology? What was there a certain switch or a certain time that you decided that that is the direction that you would go in instead of the norm?
Well, Stoicism I found accidentally. I was there, and I recommend this to everybody. Get uncomfortable, learning discomfort, learning new things where you have to sit down and your brain hurts because you've never heard it before. Being comfortable in a growth mindset matters. And I started trying to figure out why people did things that didn't make sense. You have people that will buy a stock, it keeps going down, and they'll never sell it. I'm like, sell it. And then 5 years later, 10 years later, they own the stock. It's never made them money. They're like, but I'm waiting for it to recover. I'm like, Blockbuster is not coming back. Netflix is here. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, like they're closing. They're like, no, no, no. People are never going to use Netflix. I'm like, so it's understanding loss aversion or solution. Why, when you learn something new, so many people refuse to switch. I'm like, or so many people would say, and so this, I'm getting to that. And they were like, I will never have a cell phone, and I will never have an iPhone or a smartphone. And they all have it. And so I just wanted to understand that. And Stoicism, when I was going through this thing called brainpickings.org, she writes about all these different books, and she reads all these books every single week. She would open your mind to all these different types of philosophers, writers, and just wide ranging poetry. She led me to find a person, Tim Ferriss, who who made the first audiobook out of the Seneca books. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to listen to it. I'm intrigued. And it just sucked me in, and just instantly I was like, I think like this. This is how I think. And this is 2000 years ago. That means we don't think differently. The same behaviors, love, ambition, fear, greed, hope, impatience, were always there. And I was at the same time reading Human Nature by Jesse Livermore, and how people always get caught up in these bandwagon effects where when and again, I'm not recommending this at all, but right after the current person won, Bitcoin went up and now it's crashing. When it's high, everybody wants to buy it, but when it's low, nobody wants to buy it. And so that led me to Human Nature, and I was trying to find the psychology behind that, and it took me some time. I understood human nature in that terms, but it didn't have the clinical definitions or the true understanding of the models, which led me to Daniel Kahneman, who won the Nobel laureate in behavioral finance. He was actually a psychologist who won, and his partner was a statistical psychologist, which I don't think anybody's ever heard of. But those are the types of things that really started to come together 2010 to 2014, and that's where I built off of it. So just a history of books, writing down models, building things up. So when you listen to a podcast, you're like, the first thing you might say is, oh, I like that. And a like is the effect heuristic. And because we're doing this live and it seems like a lot of people are talking about this particular stock, then that's the availability heuristic. And then if it was 180 versus 200, you might see it's a good value. So that could be, the bandwagon of it. So all these things I wanted to understand. So that led me to start doing this. And that's kind of how I got into this, is now I truly can see things because I understand the mental framework of how the crowd makes decisions. So I was able to actually go in and buy ChatGPT and Anthropic 4 years ago, which are up a lot, because I knew they work. I didn't know which one because but I knew that that was the area. So I put a lot of money there, which has given me substantially higher returns than the average person. But now I'm also offloading that because now it seems frothy, where a lot of people just want to buy more and more and more. That's when you start to understand, I want to keep some in my pocket. And that's where the booms and busts happen and people keep making the mistakes over and over again. 1 minute it's housing can't lose. And then we learn that you can lose in housing. You can lose in anything. It depends on the boom and bust cycle of it. So that's essentially, these types of things have fascinated me. And it's like, I don't want to see a car crash. I don't want to see a train crash, but they're going to happen. So I want to avoid them. I don't want to get caught in them. And it's painful because people are going to keep speeding, and if they can go faster and faster and faster, they'll continue to do that until the crash. And
Right.
ultimately that's what makes people wake up, so to speak. And
So, Will, let me ask you this: what is, at this moment in time, the way that you do approach financial advising? What advice would you have for people at this moment in time that we're living in history, where all the turmoil with the markets are going on? And like you said about Bitcoin, you could have the president come, out, make a statement, and then things go haywire. And, it's just not predictable normally as it would be based on one person, I guess I should say.
well,
Um,
that is true. Yes, he is a grifter. He's went on and he's literally had people in his department go in and buy $50 million of Bitcoin right before he says we're going to create a national strategic reserve of Bitcoin, and that person make $1 billion. Like, that's not normal stuff. Or taking, or letting insiders know some of this stuff. Yes, that's not normal. But what that tells you is, if and this is what I follow, and this is how I've been able to be very successful over the past. I mean, I always make adjustments, but he's destroying relationships that have been around Canada and Mexico. So for me, and I'm not recommending this, I'm just saying how I view it is, are more companies moving to Mexico or expanding production there because they're more stable than the United States? I literally said that out loud. I can't believe it. Yes. So I've moved money. Now, most people just buy international. That's the indexes. And I'm not saying you don't want indexes. I'm not saying that. But if you buy a bulk of indexes, some of them will be A's for the year and other ones will be C's, D's, and E's. I don't want C grades. I want A's. I want excellence. So that's why I build and architect these. So I would have money in Mexico, let's say, but I'm not disclosing how much. I would have money in the large cap emerging markets in Latin America. And have you traveled much overseas, Rashad?
yes,
Okay.
yes, I
When
have.
you go over there, you'll see a lot. Like, I went to Honduras to help children who were lost their parents to the drug trade and stuff like that. They may not have much electricity and no air conditioning, no TV, but they all have cell phones. They never had a landline. So that may be an area where you'll see growth because they didn't have to build the landline infrastructure. So there's all these things that you can do, but it requires discipline and work, and it's very hard to do. Also, when someone attacks NATO or even threatens to attack their NATO, they're not going to buy as much military equipment from us. They're going to start building their own. So being in front of that, meaning before they announce it, is how you get in front of it. If you can't trust your neighbor, if your neighbor's, lighting your grass on fire constantly and doing things to you, he's not a good neighbor. And you don't want to work with them, and you're not going to be friendly to them. So essentially, I've done things like invest in areas that I knew where money would go. And some of the biggest areas when we're unstable is money goes to the second largest currency, which is the euro. And so
Mhm.
you put money there and you make 15% just by putting money in the euro versus the dollar. Like, that's a tremendous return just out of that alone. And that tells you. So it's not my opinion. It doesn't matter whether I like or dislike, and I do dislike, but I just follow the money and I get in front of it. Because when it's like Enron. The CEOs there and insiders were selling it left and right, but telling everybody to buy it. That's what I do. I don't have a like or dislike for that matters, but you just follow where the money is going and you get in front of it. And ultimately, you don't want to ride it up. And when you start to see the money kind of pulling out, you don't want to try to squeeze it out. And most people just see the top line. They see like a car going 200 miles an hour, but they don't know if the engine's about to explode. They don't know. They're not checking the oil and the transmission and all the other stuff. I'm monitoring all that because, or how good your brakes are, or your brakes. So all these things matter. And for me, that's what separates me from other people. And granted, I understand it's not scalable in the huge sense because most of the firms, Vanguard, Fidelity, or the bigger firms, they're designed for mass marketing. But I think if you can work with me, or if you really want a hands-on approach, then that's what I offer to people in a world where everything's automated and AI. And I don't want to be that. I'll never be that. I'm a surfer. I like being with people. I like being, so my nature is different. I like being
Right.
in the water. And I love people, but I also don't want to be overworked where I'm working at 8 o'clock at night because I have so many clients. I don't want as many clients. I want better relationships.
Right. You're looking for that perfect medium.
Hmm. I know
I
what enough
understand.
is, which is very rare in my field because greed is good in my field typically, and I'm not
Right.
that person, which is very unique. I really stand out in that aspect.
Very, very in financial advising or financial industry, period. But
Yes.
let me ask you, man, as far as you said around 45 years old to 90, 93, I think you said that
Yeah, I did
your
say, but I mean,
oldest client is.
yeah, that's my
So I'm
oldest.
just in between there. I would like to speak on Gen X. I just had a conversation yesterday with a guy who is a financial coach or a coach to financial advisors. He was an influencer.
Okay.
And he said what he's noticed during his studies is that when we even talk about when the studies are done and when Bloomberg or these financial industries are speaking about wealth transfer or wealth period, they pretty much skip over Generation X. Generation X is like the lost child that they don't know what to do with. And so I want to ask you, man, with that being the case, what are some of the myths or some of the I don't know common struggles that you see with people around the midlife area, such as are they afraid to invest, or are they too dependent on their 401k? But because I kind of know how we were taught to just stay with a job for 50 years and retire and you'll be good.
I think what really made our lives different is that our children, their college costs were just outrageous. That's changed. Where when I went to college, the state, if I went in state, the state paid 75% of the tuition. Today, it's 25% because of all these budget cuts. And so a lot of parents have had to spend significantly more money, take loans and stuff, which ate into their savings, where the baby boomers who had us didn't have to really pay. Now, granted, I'm not saying it wasn't appreciated. I'm just saying the cost, the sizable notion. And then if we bought a house at the right time, we did okay prior to 2000, but if we bought a house afterwards, the housing costs shot up relative to how much we make. So having kids, a lot of them are living at home or, didn't leave the nest, so to speak, because it's much more expensive. And, you have literally the highest percentage of people ever living at home or can't afford housing. So there's a lot of different costs. So the burden has changed for Generation X. That was not the same for the baby boomers who literally had plentiful jobs, high paying jobs, pensions. So this was like kind of the first transition where globalization in 2000 took over. We didn't have globalization prior to 2000. That's when it really started to take off. Maybe 25% of the US companies did business overseas. Now it's over 50%. So we've been the global generation from literally dial up, which was 14K, which is someone picks up the phone, you get to high speed. So we had the rotary. Do you remember the rotary?
Yeah, yeah.
And you just or get off the phone, and we went from analog to digital, which is a big. Now I'm not saying baby boomers didn't, but they were retired by a lot of this, so they've adapted, but only at what they need. We've had to go through a full change in jobs, databases. There was no Excel databases until we were children. I mean, our young adults, and then that took bookkeepers away and created. So we've witnessed some of the greatest changes in terms of in our prime years, and a lot of volatility, a lot of layoffs, a lot of overseas jobs that never affected. I'm not saying it's not harder for the younger, but we've been a part of the greatest trauma and change. And I think we were built for it because our commercials, I don't know if you remember this or not, it would literally say, "It's 10 o'clock, parents. Do you know where your kids are?"
Hey, let me stop you there. The guy that I interviewed yesterday said the same exact commercial. He said the same exact thing. And yes, that's so true. We was built
It's 10
for
o'clock at night. Like, parents don't do that anymore. We were a free range child. We were
it.
free
Right.
range. And I think we're doing okay. But I think we've been caught with the burden because the baby boomers have had too much power and control. And they've allowed corporations to really rig it against us and make it harder. So we're the first generation that's really faced adversity and not necessarily had it better than the previous generations in terms of savings. Healthcare costs have skyrocketed. None of this affected the baby boomers. So we're kind of the brunt of it, where an average family, it might be $26,000 for a family of four. And when you include the employer part, it's 35,000. Like, these are outrageous. Our jobs are being sent. And so there's a lot of other factors that have come into play. But yes, we probably will get this massive wealth transfer to us, but that doesn't help us while we're struggling, if we're struggling. And a lot of us are struggling because when you look at it, a lot of people haven't saved enough for retirement. And, that could be a burden with Social Security and other stuff possibly being affected. So there's a lot of things. And I think if we're 55, 56, 57, you know, we're not there yet for retirement. It's the baby boomers, but there's going to be some challenges ahead without a doubt. I just don't know what will be a resolution. Hopefully, there will be a resolution. We've seen Mondami win in New York and really addressing real concerns about things. And that was, that's New York City is 8.5 million people. That's more than all but 8 states in terms of. And when people win and become popular and do what they say they're going to do, we're not used to that with politicians. You know what
Oh
I
no,
mean?
not at all.
And
Not at all.
and and like one of the things we've had to deal with is this high cost of food, because now we went as a nation, and this is something like I really do study a crazy amount compared to the average person, but we went from a food exporter to now we're importing more food than we export, which is not how we should when we have this massive breadbasket in the middle of the country with all these rivers. But all these corporations have gotten them. We no longer make enough beef to feed us.
Hmm.
And this just doesn't make sense because we have massive amounts of great prairie, great fertile, not too much rain, not too little rain, like perfect amounts. So there's been a lot of changes and disruptions to things that really make no sense at all. And I think if we're able to deliver in certain areas, I think sometimes and I think a lot of us know this, sometimes we need a heart attack. And using this as a metaphor, not before we wake up till we got to eat right and exercise, or we got to have
Oh Lord.
a serious health scare. And I think we're getting that right now. And that is my
Yeah.
hope as a people. We we go move forward because incremental change isn't going to help now because there's this great saying in oh God, I can't think of the sun also rises. It goes 1926. He goes, how'd you go? He says, how'd you go bankrupt? He goes, gradually, then suddenly. And that's kind of how we wake up one day and we go, oh my Lord, things are expensive, beef prices, all this stuff. So I think that's the biggest challenge is where are we going to be 5 or 10 years from now? And what can we do to position ourselves? If our kids are out of college, then we need to do some makeup. We need to save some money in areas, maybe not buy a fancy car, maybe downsize the house, but save that money for what we truly need so that we can retire at 65 or 66. Because you don't want to work. I mean, I will because I'm the owner and my job's different, but you can't be out driving in heavy traffic every day and doing all these things. You don't want to do that at 75 or 70
Right.
because
Definitely.
you need to live your life, spend time with your family. Like for me, I'm going to be surfing, I'm going to be traveling around. I'm never going to overwork. I just don't want to have that life. But I'm very lucky because I put the work in to build this many years ago and have continued to refine it. So to me, I want people to enjoy themselves, but not sit at home and watch TV either, to be active. So
Yeah, that would be ideal. Definitely. Have a little money so you can move around as please. It kind of hurts my heart to see people working at the Kroger that can barely. Man, I remember a time when Kroger was just for people that kind of are the grocery store.
yes,
Um, just it was for people who maybe wanted a second job just for additional income, had a kid in college, and kind of just wanted to make some extra money. So, but now the people that I see is totally different. Um, because you could tell that they don't want to be there. Like they are barely there, but they have to. They have to. So I would
Kroger's
like to see a
Kroger's
blend.
run by a private equity firm, and private equity firms, all they care about is extracting everything. So we've allowed a lot of them into our health fields and stuff like that. And
Yeah,
all they do is just they make billions for themselves, pay no taxes, and just destroy American businesses. They've done it with Toys R Us. They've done it with Joanne Fabrics, things that just they just constantly do it. They gut them, drain them, destroy people's lives, pensions, and stuff like that. So a lot of that stuff didn't really exist. I mean, they had some leverage buyouts and stuff in the 80s, and Richard Gere made them famous, so to speak, in that movie. But they weren't like today, where they're monstrosities
right.
that just extract from us. So there's a lot of really extractive nature that has happened. And so we're the generation that's having to deal with the fallout of the baby boomers just accruing so much and not really caring because they've gotten so hardened with their wealth, so to speak.
Yeah, definitely. I don't see they truly hardened their heart. The boomers did. Wow.
They
I don't
did.
know. Maybe it was the Vietnam War or something, but I don't know what it was, but they
There's a
did,
lot of
man.
good ones, but a lot of them have just hardened it. And that's one of my goals is to continue to make us feel inclusive and growth minded and
Right.
working the world together and have empathy for the animals and the planet and everybody. Because when you learn to have empathy, you're happier. I mean,
Yeah,
I can
man.
have sympathy, but I want to have empathy with people. I want to understand them.
Well, that's a great job. I hope more people follow in your footsteps because we need more like that. Man, just to save the rainforest, save some of the animals, just
We
living
saved the
amongst each other.
whales. We saved the whales, and I'll give you an analogy that I have had to use. Obviously, when Black Lives Matter and other things came out, I'm like, you do understand when we said save the whales, we didn't say kill all the other animals. They were just, you know what I mean? They're like, I never
Yeah.
thought of that. So simple framing to help people understand profit creators, or when they go Tesla, I'm like, but Tesla doesn't pay taxes. And have you ever seen a Tesla not use the road? So they don't contribute to the roads, the bridges, and all the things that require them to build the cars or drive on it. No different than Amazon. Have you ever seen a package delivered without using the roads or the schools, the train? They don't pay into this. So they're just
Right.
taking money out of the system without putting it in. But if we didn't have any roads, well, they wouldn't have built Amazon here. You needed the infrastructure and the taxes to be paid. People often go, wow, I never thought of that. I'm like, well, why didn't they do it in the middle of North Korea or Russia? Because there wasn't the infrastructure, the education, and all the other things that mattered. So we put into this system for decades, and for the first time, we've not spent money on research, education, transportation, exploration, and those things. By not putting that money back has created this massive debt that we never had before for our generation as well.
Is there an intentional dumbing down of America
No, I know
through the
it's a
school
common thing.
systems? It just, from where we living at right now, it just kind of seemed like, now that I look back and I'm like, is that why coaches were teaching social studies? Was this all intentional? Because we're not even not a generation. We're not even a country of thinkers anymore, or a slight
What
percentage of us definitely are not.
This is an intricate question. Part of it is your zip code. If you're wealthy, you'll get into schools, you'll get all the additional support. But there's lots of studies in the past that have been brought up by, I think, Malcolm Gladwell. Like 30,000 students a year or high school seniors are brilliant, but are poor, dirt poor, and score tremendously well. So we have a lot of that, but we've made the systems even worse. I believe that that is true, and we've removed a lot of the meritocracy. But immigrants have also been a major factor for us, because we're having a brain drain now because this administration's chased people out of the country. And that really coming together with our people created a synergistic effect. When you bring people from overseas and here together, you have different world perspectives, which is why all these great companies have been formed here, because Europe hasn't done it and no other country has. You need different perspectives. So I do hear you in that. And but it's natural, because think about it this way. You have someone come from Honduras, comes to Maryland, where I am. I have an education, I speak the language, and I have this, and I can't get a job, but they can. I have every advantage, because we often look at just our personal worldview. Like, I have it so tough. I'm like, you have it so tough. What do you mean you have it so tough? You got a car at 16, you got all the money. Like, so our perspectives and our surroundings and our social structures do play a huge role in that. So I don't have an answer for you, but obviously some of the states, like Oklahoma was like 15th ranked state in education. Now they're 49th. So that has been an intentional destruction of that, and you've seen that in other states that are conservative, where they've destroyed the thought process. So that is intentional, but I hope that that is a dip in the long-term arc of justice, so to speak.
Definitely.
And that
I've
that's what I hope.
I've heard about the I don't know if you have, but the school to prison pipeline, and mainly because the corporations are heavily invested into prisons,
Yes, that
and
is true.
so that's why I kind of asked that question of the just intentional dumbing down. I heard once that I heard a study that says they build prisons based on the child's in a certain group, certain area, based on the child's grades by the third grade.
I don't know about that. I will tell you this though. When I've sat down with people, because there's just so many topics, and people will go, "Oh, we need more prisons." I'm like, we have 2.2 million people in this country, at least in prison, probably more now with the detention centers. If the average cost is $50,000, when you tell us we can't put 1.5 million students in college every year, but we can put 2.2 million people in prison for double the price. You're out of your mind. You obviously don't have a clear head on your shoulders. And people are like, I never thought of that. I'm like, it's because you don't think. But that's human nature, because there's only so much information you can take in. You worked all day, you're running around, you want to watch sport. Like, there's just so much. So we ultimately as a collective have to have enough pain together, which I think we're getting to at this point, where we actually sit down and go, they promised this, even though many of us knew tariffs are taxes, they just wouldn't listen, because the social bond is just, hey, I'm in this social circle, and social groups are powerful. And over time, if it was your church or neighborhood and they kept saying these people are bad, ultimately, all of a sudden you wake up and you're like, I lost my farm, I lost my health care. Like, at some point, you're like, I'm hurt and I need to reevaluate. So when that happens, unfortunately, that's typically what I call a critical juncture. And that's like, if you read the book Why Nations Fail, it tells you there are points that cause change. And there was a point, probably the fairness doctrine in '84, when Rush Limbaugh and I went on TV and started talking, that started changing how people, or in 1994, how things hardened. And maybe we're getting to the breaking point where it swings back, because it happened in England. They voted to leave Europe, and they've been poorer. They voted to have constant recessions. Like, that does, and they hurt themselves. It doesn't even make sense. So they're
Right.
poor as a nation, significantly poor, and they voted to be poor. And even the people who made that decision and are poor, they're like, well, at least we're free. I'm like, you're worse off. You always have people that are upset, but you have enough people that say we need change. And so
Right.
I'm hoping that we go from one critical juncture to hopefully the breaking point to move forward with that. So that's what I hope. But I also, for people who invest, they get comfortable investing in just the US. The US is losing brains, they're losing research money, they're losing NIH money, they're losing all the things that we were leaders at. So I have to make decisions based on that. And I'm just not going to willingly buy international stuff. I have strategic things. The number one import from Mexico, do you know what it is in the US?
No.
It's okay. It's computers.
Didn't know that.
So yes. And that's because Mexico builds a lot of computers. They get their chips from Taiwan. We now import as much from Taiwan as we did from China. So we import directly Taiwanese chips. We also have the first Taiwanese factory in the US, building them here, but that's under the Biden CHIPS Act and the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, which were critical junctures and why I bought stuff. But then Mexico imports those chips and then puts them in. And so understanding how global networks work and following that makes it easy for me to make adjustments to people's money and understanding these types of flows. And that's
Right.
what really separates me, is most people buy everything, but I don't want to own Russia. I don't want to, and a lot of people own Russia for no reason at all, and they don't even know it. And I'm like, that doesn't seem like a booming economy to me. It's because that's one of the BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, and China. And China markets haven't really done much over the past 10 years. I mean, they'll have
Right.
ups and downs, but China overbuilds and is flooding the market with things to become a manufacturing hub. They're not necessarily worried about having their stock market up. They just want to also reliant to be on their manufacturing. So they have a different goal than high price stocks, because the CEO isn't going to bribe Z. They don't have power over Z. That's the difference. We're allowing these oligarchs to have power over our politicians. So we've done things that are extractive, where Z, and I don't like that they're not a democracy, but the corporation doesn't tell him what to do, or they disappear like Jack Ma did. He disappeared for 30 days and he came back and says, I love my country. He towed that line well. I'm just saying, you got to have, when people become corrupt, you got to have them accountable. And we don't do that. So,
No.
so
No.
we're worried
We
about stock prices, not manufacturing and wages and health. So that's what I'm hoping becomes a line. And if that means moving capital overseas to specific areas that will benefit us, we could have a decade where we don't make any money in the US and people not being able to retire. That's a very reasonable thing. It's
Yeah.
happened 2000 to 2012 and 68 to 82. But people are like, no, that could never happen. I'm like, it can happen. It's happened 43% of the time over the last 70 years.
Jeez. Yeah. It's a real thing. It's let me ask you this, Will, because
Okay.
one is just as important as the other. Besides money, so there's people that you work with, your ideal client.
Mm-hmm.
What does a person, what type of person would you not work with? Money
I
aside.
don't. Okay. Well, that's an easy one. I About 75% of people I can pretty get along with, but there's people that just I've had meetings where they're like liberals control the weather, which is just like crazy, or they're just gung ho and telling me that even though they've worked with me, though they don't understand that. Like I'll buy oil companies. I don't like oil companies, but I did in 2020 because they were very cheap and I knew their assets were worth more. I can't make decisions based on my likes and dislikes because ultimately there's just too many companies that I would dislike. You know what I mean? And then so I don't want to hear this constant political stuff. I mean, everyone knows where I stand. I started funding AOC back 8 years ago. Um, and I've always been a progressive. I care about charities. The orangutans I rescue overseas, they were funded by our Department of Wildlife, and they were cut under this administration. They were cut under the like that stuff. 100,000 or 500,000 is nothing to a United States when we're blowing trillions on ice and stuff like this. So for me, I don't want somebody that's going to be nasty. Now I break it down like this: there's the con artist, and then the conned. I have contempt for the con artist and compassion for the conned. So I do have people that made votes, but they were blindly unaware, but I don't blame them for that. And if they're kind and caring, like I work with them and we have great relationships and they know I care about them and they care about me. But the people that just don't, we'll never work together because I'm a very strong personality and I share my moral values and I share my Stoic values. And like in Rome, if you were a Roman citizen, it didn't matter whether you were from Spain, Morocco, African, Egypt, it didn't matter. You were a Roman citizen. It's about equanimity, being together. We're all equal. Summum bonum, the greatest good, and sympathy. We're all in this together. I view that. That's how I view everything. Because Rome was the first America, so to speak. You had people in Egypt, you had people in Spain, you had people in Morocco. None, I mean, you have a lot of different races and religions there. It works when everybody says, hey, we're Roman, which they were.
Right.
But, you could be Egyptian, but you were Roman, no different than you're a Texan and I'm a Marylander. I mean, it doesn't separate us. It's just an identifiable nature.
Right. Okay. Okay. You said that was an easy one. You know exactly you know exactly what the 25% was. I get it.
Yes.
You have to have a line drawn somewhere. What how do you market yourself? Let's just say you do, want to pick up a few more clients. Or is it word of mouth or how do you go about that?
Well, of course, I get referrals. This year, I have a goal. I wanted to add 10 clients. I've added two already, or three already. I like to be systematic about how I do it. People pass away. Sometimes their kids take the money. Things happen. But I also believe we're about to hit a very challenging patch in the United States. And with that being said, I feel like I have the space and the network and the team to do that. And if you want to work with me directly, which is, I think, enjoyable, I think I'm a nice person, that's an opportunity because as I scale up, my goal is to take my algorithm that I use and manage because I enjoy the mental work, the cognition, and the deliberate. I like the 98% to relate in paddling. Like when you surf, 90% of it's paddling and exercise, 2% ecstasy. It's the same in this field. But I will hire other advisors and they'll run my systems and they'll do stuff. But in this case, my goal is to add about 10 clients total and a good amount of wealth and really help people, because I think more than any other time in history, we're really facing some challenges. I mean, we're threatening to bomb our own UN members and NATO members and blocking bridges to Canada and, calling it. So that's my goal. I want to add some people because I think I could really help people. And I'm not overworked right now. And I have great relationships and great team. And if I get 10, then I can add another team member, and then I can consider maybe a few more people. So that I do things slow and steady because I never want to take on too many people. I don't want to be, you know, uh, drinking out of a fire hose, so to speak. So I'm
Got
very
it.
intentional with that.
Got it, man. So I wanted to ask that, and that kind of set you up, and you answered it for the next question, which was, what does the future hold for you? So I know it's surfing, and then I think the rest of it is what you just said.
Yeah, I love surfing. I do want to, I may consider getting a place in Costa. I hate winters up here. It's been the coldest winter since 1977. Our harbor and bay is all frozen. It's not been that way since for 49 years. Like I hate it and I like being in the water. So that's really my goal, but I'll work anywhere. Relationships, you pick up the phone, text, call. It doesn't matter. We're in a global world now, but
Yeah.
I'll be in Eastern or Central time because, or Pacific time, one of them. But that's not going to change. I just like being close to nature. I like being able to hike. I like being at the beach. I like walking around in my swim trunks, jumping in the water. Getting 80-degree water is nice.
I heard that, man.
Yeah.
Um, if someone wants to follow you or work with you, how do they do that?
You can go to my website and book a 30-minute conversation with me. I think it's important to have conversations first, making sure we're aligned. We can, it's beneficial for both of us. And, you like me, I like you, and, assets and other stuff. And if not, I'll guide you along to anything I can assist you with. But please reach out. Don't hesitate. I do spend time meeting with people because I really want to grow really strategically and ethically and morally a specific way. But I do enjoy conversations and I enjoy meeting people. So I'd love for you just to listen to this. If you feel motivated, you want to learn about behavioral psychology, finance, stoicism, my book, whatever, that's what I do. And I am a ranked super forecaster, which is one of the fun things I love doing, is forecasting the future.
Also, where can is the book on Amazon, or where can the book be purchased?
Yeah, it's on Amazon. Will or it's just the enough equation. You can buy it there, or I can send you a PDF version of the book as well that you can give out to anybody that wants it. You can also download it off my website as well too.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah,
right, man.
I mean,
Well, I'm gonna let you
yeah,
go because I know you're a busy man, and thank you for coming on the Millionaire by Morning podcast, speaking with our guest about stoicism. I really think that that's an interesting thing to focus on for us all, especially in the financial industry. We do need, with all the corruption that's going on, we need empathy these days. So thank you, Will, for your message. And to anyone out there that's listening to this, remember the motto: continue to make moves, make money, and make meaningful memories. Until next time, we'll see you later.